views expressed in this podcast are not representative of the producer or the production company. Hello, welcome to Mathe, a Political Statement, Episode 4, New Year, New Statements. Very exciting stuff. Had a great winter break between last semester and now. I turned 21, so that's exciting. Spent time with family, went back to my hometown to hang out. Had a lot of fun, saw some old friends. It was great. Now we've started a new semester, and funny enough, I've discovered that the first semester, or the first week of a semester, can oftentimes be more stressful than the last week of the semester, or finals week, which I thought was kind of interesting. But anyway, today I have a pretty simple and straightforward agenda for what I'm going to be talking about. And I'm going to be talking about some Trump stuff related to the wall. I'm going to be talking about them pesky toll bridges and toll roads. And then I'm going to be talking about Jeff Sessions and marijuana and all that fun stuff. So, let me see. So, the first item on the agenda, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this just because, well, my foot's in a ton of pain and I haven't had time to prepare all of these very, very well. But with that, nonetheless, let me talk about Trump and what he's had to say about DACA and the wall. So basically, Trump says that there will be no protection for dreamers without wall. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, dreamers are basically people who came to America illegally when they were children, and they have since matured, become adults. And there's a provision called DACA that was basically designed to protect these people who came here as children from being deported because they've spent their whole lives here, yada, 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 so on and so forth. Well, Trump basically came forward and said that he will not be enforcing these protections, and he'll do away with them unless Democrats cooperate with him on the wall. And so basically he's saying, okay, no, we could have DACA. We can protect these immigrants so long as you guys enforce or help me build the wall, which I think is pretty interesting because back in, I want to say it was June or July of 2017, Trump came out and said that he doesn't believe we actually need the full wall. We only need walls along parts of the border because there's quote-unquote natural barriers like rivers, mountains, and I do think that has some validity to it. But it's kind of interesting how his stance on the wall has changed. I 100% think that Trump doesn't actually care about the wall, and then he's just saying it for political standing and to try to gain some support. Very smart move politically. A little messed up to be misleading the voters, but smart nonetheless. So that's it for that topic. As I said, I wanted to keep the portion on Trump and DACA and the wall sweet and short. My producer's laughing, which can only mean something bad. So second item on the agenda is going to be bridge tolls. Now, there is a measure in the Bay Area right now that's going to be voted on in June. And basically the whole idea is they're going to raise tolls on bridges and roads in the Bay Area. For those of you who aren't from California, I can't imagine very many of you aren't. But for those of you that don't know what the Bay Area is it's like San Francisco, Oakland, that kind of area. And there are a lot of the bridges, I think just about every single bridge except for maybe the Golden Gate has some sort of toll where you have to pay before you can use that bridge or road, which I personally think is ridiculous. I mean, isn't that the reason we pay taxes? Why are we paying taxes if they're not going forward on financing the reparations of these bridges and roads? I mean, whenever you try to tell a statist that taxation is theft or that the taxation isn't necessarily necessary, that's one of the biggest arguments that's brought up, is that you need taxes to build roads. There's a pretty commonly used libertarian meme where it's like, when arguing with a statist, what's their first response? My roads. And it's pretty valid because, I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, I was asking my mom, why we have to pay taxes. And no joke, my mom said to pay for roads. That's the go-to response. So my question is, if taxes are for roads, why are we paying tolls at these bridges? What I thought was really interesting is that one of the reasons cited for why they were having this toll increase is they wanted to use the money to pay for public transportation. And so my question is, why is it the job of people that are regularly commuting into San Francisco? Because let's be honest, a big chunk of the people that are going to be paying these increases in tolls are people that are commuting from out of town into San Francisco for work, because it's no big secret that San Francisco is expensive to live in. So why are people being charged to use, quote unquote, first of all, a public road? It's a road that's built with taxpayer dollars just to go and finance transportation of somebody else. I think that's ridiculous. It's quote unquote secret subsidy, which is flat out wrong. Not to mention the fact that, once again, as I mentioned, we have taxes that should be paying for public transportation. So why are we using tolls? So that's really my opinion on toll bridges and toll roads. As I said, that one wasn't going to be all that long either. Now for the juice of it, because this has been an issue that arose not too long after finals week happened. I think it was a week or two after. And that is the whole Jeff Sessions marijuana thing. So for those of you that don't know, Jeff Sessions revoked the Cole memo, which was an Obama era memo that basically limited how the DEA can operate and the Department of Justice can operate when busting down legal marijuana operations, whether it be recreationally or medicinally, because this was established in 2013, right after Colorado and Washington became the first states to legalize marijuana for recreational use. And basically, what the Cole memo did is it prevented it gave the power, the Department of Justice power to interfere with legal marijuana operations only under certain circumstances. For instance, they could break up marijuana operations in order to prevent the distribution of marijuana to minors, to prevent revenue from the sale of marijuana from going to criminal enterprises, gangs, and cartels, preventing the diversion of marijuana from states where it is legal under state law in some form to other states, preventing state-authorized marijuana activity from being used as a cover or pretext for the trafficking of other illegal drugs or other illegal activity, preventing violence and the use of firearms in the cultivation and distribution of marijuana, preventing drugged driving and exacerbation of other adverse public health consequences associated with marijuana use, preventing the growing of marijuana on public lands and the attendant public safety and environmental dangers posed by marijuana production on public lands, and preventing marijuana possession or use on federal property. So that was it. They weren't allowed to go and raid innocent mom and pop medical dispensaries anymore, unless it was covered under one of those, like if the shop was illegally trafficking some sort of other drug, or if they were selling to minors, then in that case they could go and break it up. But as long as they stuck within state law and weren't violating any of those pretexts, the Department of Justice really couldn't do anything about it. Now, Jeff Sessions, who is a very well-known opponent of legal marijuana, anyway, Jeff Sessions, huge opponent of marijuana. Me and a friend, who I shall not name, had a conversation about this the other day and trying to figure out what exactly happened in Jeff Sessions' past to cause him to have such a stick up his butt when it comes to marijuana. It's true. I mean, it's gone to the point to where even mainstream Republicans are against Sessions on this. As a matter of fact, Cory Gardner of Colorado, he's a Republican senator for Colorado, says he will be putting a hold on every single nomination from the Department of Justice. And Gardner is not some sort of fringe Republican. He's not like libertarian or any offshoot of Republican. He's a mainstream Republican. As a matter of fact, he's the chair of the National Republican Senate Committee. So he's mainstream. So it's not just Democrats that are opposed to Sessions on this. Basically, everyone is against Sessions on this, and I think it's ridiculous. The war on drugs, it's a failed experiment. It shouldn't exist. I mean, we learned back in Prohibition that when you make something illegal, all that does is it creates a huge black market for it. It creates these large criminal gangs, and it gets people rich off of this black market industry. So I think it's ridiculous to sit here and even think for a minute that you could adequately stop these substances from coming in, especially marijuana, one that really has no proven, and let's be honest here, it has no proven negative health consequences that we know of, primarily because the federal government doesn't let studies occur. There have been illegal studies since 1996 now that's medically legal, studies done in California and other states, but federally, I mean, there haven't been any large, sizable, financed studies on the negative effects of marijuana. As a matter of fact, I remember a couple years ago, I saw a study done by Boston Medical Center that suggested that there are actually no recognizable negative health effects to the consumption of marijuana. Now, obviously, if you smoke anything, you're going to be getting that tar and other bad stuff into your system. However, there are obviously ways to avoid that, whether it be edibles, creams, vaporizers, extracts, yada, yada, yada. But even if it was bad for people, I mean, it's their bodies. Why is it the government's job to tell people what they cannot do with their own bodies? I think it's absolutely absurd. And then also, because we talked about a Republican being against this, obviously the Democrats are pretty against this too. I mean, that Democrats for the longest time were the party for marijuana legalization. Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire is the lead Democrat on the Department of Justice subcommittee and will work to ensure resources are devoted to the opioid crisis, not attacking legal marijuana, which is pretty great. I myself, at one point, as I've mentioned in a previous episode, used to, back in my less wise days, be a medical marijuana patient. I wouldn't say less wise days, because I still know very wise people who use marijuana. My question is, to get off the medical topic very quickly, because my producer just made a very good point. Why is it that marijuana is illegal, but tobacco isn't? Because tobacco is arguably way worse for you than marijuana, and alcohol and all these other substances that you're allowed to put in your body. I mean, just look at cornstarch. Cornstarch is a great example, or other fake sugars, because the body, believe it or not, I don't know if you guys know this, but fake sugar or artificial sweeteners are way worse for you than regular sugar, because your body doesn't know how to metabolize it properly, and that could cause all sorts of problems. Just all this crazy shit that people are allowed to put in their bodies, but they can't smoke a harmless plant which has been proven to have positive health benefits. See, I'm looping us back into the helpfulness. But anyway, yeah, all these things are terrible but legal. So why is it that something that's not terrible is illegal? To be entirely honest, I've heard all different theories as to why marijuana was legal, ranging from, well, my understanding of the whole issue is that the reason it originally became illegal was because A, there was a large number of African Americans that were using it, and obviously when it was illegalized, this was back when discrimination was huge in America. And another big reason it was made illegal is because hemp, which is a close relative of marijuana, was being used as an alternative to lumber, because you can make rope, paper, fake wood. You can make everything with hemp. And what was it, Hearst? I want to say it was Hearst had huge holdings in the lumber industry, and he didn't want competition, so he actually spoke out in front of Congress and said that marijuana makes white women want to sleep with black men. And that, kids, is why marijuana is illegal. Now, I'd say probably the reason why marijuana is still illegal federally is probably a combination of two things. Number one, I'd say because, like it used to be, hemp can be used for everything, and you have oil companies, because hemp can be used to create plastic. And I don't know if you guys know this, but regular plastic is made from oil, and so the oil companies have a lot to lose if hemp comes in and hemp plastics start being commonplace. Same with the lumber industry. The lumber industry has a ton to lose. The concrete and mining industry has a lot to lose because there's this thing called hemp rate, and it's supposed to be stronger than concrete, interestingly enough. Yeah, hemp is the strongest natural fiber in existence. Oh yeah. So the stuff they do with nylon nowadays, hemp. I mean, no, nylon is. I'm not saying that nylon is hemp, but before nylon, nothing beat hemp, and even now, I mean, if you look at some nylon ropes and some hemp ropes beat nylon ropes. And then obviously you get into the super thin ropes that hold up like 5,000 pounds. My dad actually just got this rope for his Jeep that's, I'd say it's probably only 3/4 thick, and that thing, it can hold his Jeep. It's rated for 10,000 pounds. So yeah, a lot of corporations have a lot to lose from hemp. That brings me to my second point. I think the second reason that marijuana is still illegal: pharmaceutical companies, because marijuana cures literally just about everything. Don't believe me? Marijuana contains what's called endocannabinoids. Now, endocannabinoids cause your cells to go through this process known as homeostasis, which is basically the biological version of, did you try turning it off and turning it back on again? It resets everything in your cells, basically. And so it's like a refresh button. And so what that does is it causes cancer cells, when cancer cells go through homeostasis, it says, wait a minute, I'm cancerous, and then they die. It causes them to become self-realized. It's really funny. Now, there are two different cannabinoids in marijuana. There's CBD and there's THC. Those are the two big ones. THC is psychoactive, and that's been proven to help with seizures, insomnia, just about depression, PTSD, just about any condition that is mental. That's why I used to take it, because I had a really bad insomnia and night terrors, and ADHD. And I have a friend, I'm not going to drop her name because I'm not sure if she's comfortable with that, who uses medical marijuana because she has gastrointestinal problems, amongst others. And that's the CBD telling your cells, hey, get your shit together. So I think that the pharmaceutical companies have a lot to lose. And now that I think about it, there's also really a third reason as to why marijuana is still legal. I can't remember the exact number, but I know that the vast majority of people in jail are in jail for drug charges. The vast majority of people in the US are in jail for drug charges. And that creates a huge oh, okay, I'll talk wider. Creates a huge industry for he's trying to communicate to me without speaking. The war on drugs creates a huge market for prison. The vast majority of charges are small drug charges, is my producer. That's what he's trying to communicate to me. But so what this does is this creates a what's the word? Prison industrial content. Yeah, and because a lot of our prisons in America are for-profit prisons, and so what you have is you have these large shady businessmen that own these large prison companies, and this is really fucked up. This is basically just very complicated. I'm blanking on the word for it. When somebody takes money, embezzlement. It's very complicated embezzlement, because basically what happens is these politicians pass drug laws, which allows police officers to arrest people, and then these people are put into prisons that are financed off of tax dollars, but they're private prisons. And what that does is that causes money to funnel towards these large business owners, which then in turn pay for the re-election of these politicians. Politicians are quite literally using your tax dollars to finance their re-elections. It's an incredibly corrupt system. It's a brilliant system. Don't get me wrong. I couldn't have created a better money machine myself. But it's incredibly messed up. It's incredibly corrupt, and it's wrong, and it needs to end. So another interesting thing that I saw in regards to the Jeff Sessions marijuana debacle is that it has actually affected stocks. It is affecting the stock market. I'm dead serious. The day after Sessions revoked the Cole memo, the average stock in a marijuana-related company dropped by 9%. That is huge. It might not sound like it, but in the terms of stocks, that is ridiculous. That is get people fired huge. Now, the widespreading economical effects of this decision have gone so far that Miracle Grow's, the company that makes Miracle Grow fertilizer, their stocks dropped by 5%. Jeff Sessions is just messing everything up. Honestly, when I read this, my first thought was Trump better denounce this dude and try to get him out of office. Otherwise, I lose all support that I had for him prior. And this really bums me out. Here's the thing that I don't think Jeff Sessions understands. He works under the president that promised to use, first of all, laissez-faire economics and to fix the economy, and to use his business brilliance to fix the economy. I mean, Trump, and a lot of people might disagree with me about this, but Trump didn't win on his social policy, because I know a lot of Republicans that think his social policy is absolutely ridiculous. Most people that voted for him because of, quote, first of all, his economic savvy, because, I mean, businessmen, if you think about it, would be able to dig us out of debt in theory, and his economic policy actually wasn't all that terrible. And so Jeff Sessions works for the big money president, yet Jeff Sessions is making the most economically ridiculous decision possible. I mean, think about this. Marijuana is the largest grossing agricultural industry in America. It's even bigger than corn. I don't have exact figures in front of me, but it's bigger than corn. Can you imagine for a minute if marijuana was legal across the board and well organized? I understand that the system we have now here in California isn't well done, and I don't know about Colorado or Washington or any of those other states, but my understanding is that it hasn't been well regulated yet. And so can you imagine if marijuana was legal across the board, how much money we could make through tax revenue from taxing marijuana? It would be insane. Insane. Every time somebody would go to buy a joint or an ounce or whatever, however much weed or whatever weed product they're buying, they would be paying not only sales taxes, but they'd be paying, I guess you could call it a sin tax. Not SYNTAX, SIN space tax. So yeah, that's my thought on how taxes fit into that whole shaboggle. What I think is interesting, I really hope Trump does something about this. So many people will suffer if this is allowed to happen. I will say, though, that the one good thing that has arisen from this is that because of Jeff Sessions' decision to repeal the Cole memo, there is now a law or a bill that is being proposed. So a couple of senators, so it looks like it's Cory Gardner again, Dean Heller of Nevada, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Rand Paul of Kentucky are objecting to the repeal of the Cole memo. Representative Dana Rohrabacher of California accused Sessions of a profound misreading of the Constitution, which allows states, not the heavy-handed federal government, to determine such issues. Okay, I'm gonna take a minute to talk about. That reminds me, before I get to the bill, the legal reason, or the legal means by which marijuana was made illegal, because I explained earlier why marijuana was made illegal and why it continues to be illegal. But it's very interesting how these policymakers managed to weasel themselves into making marijuana illegal. Now, I can't remember the exact case name. We did review it in my constitutional government class, though. But a couple years ago, there was a woman here in California, and she was arrested, and she had like 99 plants confiscated from her, as well as a bunch of weed. And she sued to get it back because she said that it was legal in my state. And so it became a big old issue of state versus federal rights. Now, basically, through studying this case, what I discovered is that the way that the federal government made marijuana illegal is there's a clause in the Constitution. I'm totally blanking on where in the Constitution it is. But basically, Congress is allowed to regulate interstate commerce, as well as make any laws that help them to regulate interstate commerce. So what they said is the interstate commerce of marijuana is illegal. Oh, what's that? We can't adequately stop interstate commerce of marijuana without making marijuana completely 100% illegal? Oh, darn. Wait, that's in our power? Okay, let's do it. That law, funny enough, first time that little trick, because that's not the first time that trick's been used. That same trick was used by FDR during the Great Depression, because they were trying to regulate the production of wheat, to try to drive wheat prices up. Wheat, W-H-E-A-T, I'm not saying weed. Wheat prices up. And basically, they said only certain farmers in certain areas could grow wheat at certain times. And this farmer was growing his own wheat, and they were like, oh, nope, that breaks the rules, because we can regulate interstate commerce of wheat, and you growing that wheat might cross state lines, and boom, federal jurisdiction. So yeah, the government has a long history of regulating plants using very, very cheaty ways. Anyway, let me get back to it. Sessions is a prisoner for his immutable belief that using drugs will destroy your life, but the more than 100 million Americans who have consumed cannabis, and particularly the 35 million who enjoy it on a regular basis, oh my god, 35 million, know better. The Attorney General seems intent on proving that you don't have to be stoned to be detached from reality. Oh, I love this article. He is also inviting a backlash. It took only days for both houses of the Vermont legislature to approve a bill allowing recreational use of cannabis, which has the support of Republican, by the way, Governor Phil Scott. This week, the New Hampshire House voted to legalize possession of small amounts of pot. The Republican Governor Chris Sununu is opposed. So obviously there are some Republicans that are still in opposition. Illinois, which allows medical marijuana, could benefit. State Senator Heather Stearns, Democrat of Chicago, who had already introduced a bill to legalize recreational use, says what the Attorney General did may be pushing states further. Rohrabacher, like the popcorn? Rohrabacher thinks Sessions' move will encourage Congress to foil him. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, total idiot, by the way, said she will introduce a bill to let states make their own choices on cannabis. Okay, maybe she's not that big of an idiot. She may find little opposition. Politico reported that it could not find a single member of Congress who had issued a statement in support of Sessions' actions. So while there are people opposed to these straightforward recreational legalizations of marijuana and all that, not a single member of Congress came forward in support of Sessions. Not a single one. That is insane. Insane. His mistake was to disturb a status quo that allowed members of Congress to accommodate public support for legalization without having to vote for it. Deference to state liberalization could be touched in terms of keeping the federal government from interfering with matters beyond its responsibilities, an approach that largely satisfied both Democrats and Republicans. Sessions is forcing many members to choose between supporting prohibition of cannabis and siding with their own states and constituents. Given that 2/3 of Americans want to allow recreational weed, it's not a shrewd strategy. Yada, 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 yada. So yeah, my solution to you guys, find out who your... Sorry, that was my phone again. Find out who your local representative is and call them. Crazy, crazy concept. But find out who your local representatives are and call them. Call them and tell them, hey, this is not right what's going on. Large drug reform needs to occur. And I think if enough people do that, and I know that I don't have that many listeners, but I just think that this is something that people need to do. People need to finally stand up. It's ridiculous that in 2018, there are 67 different genders, but only one legal option for marijuana, which is none. So on account of my foot hurting, we're going to cut this episode just a little bit short. Actually, I think we did pretty good on time. So this has been Colby, Mathe, A Political Statement. Thank you for listening to Mathe, A Political Statement. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube. My name is Colby Mathe, signing off. And remember to make a statement. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.